Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody, kicking off your Monday after a wild week 8 of ACC football, and one that has reshaped the conference championship picture just a bit, with Louisville stunning Miami to kick things off Friday night. Of course, huge game there. Got all sorts of coaching carousel things going on as well, with Mike Norvell's future now in question after losing on the road at Stanford, but that is the opposite end of the spectrum. On this show today, we'll have Alexis Cubit of the Louisville Beat joining us at 7:45 to talk about the Cardinals and what they were able to do down in Miami. And Chad Bishop, covering Georgia Tech, joins us at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. We appreciate you guys who have all clicked that subscribe button to the All Access AM channel. If you're listening to this on the All Access AM channel, please hit that subscribe button, follow button, like button, all the notifications, all the things. We are available on podcast form now, Spotify, Apple, after the show as well. So we turn that around pretty quickly as best we can for you guys to make sure you guys have that out there too. So just search All Access AM on Apple or Spotify to find us. And of course, we'll break down the week 8 that was in ACC football. Again, a wild one. Let's jump into it a little bit here. I'm not going to spend too much time on Louisville, Miami, but I want to give my thoughts before we have Alexis join us at 7:45. Jeff Brom has done a magnificent job building a roster over the last couple of years that can go out and do that. And one of the things that is, of course, talked about Jeff Brom is his wins against top 10 opponents as an unranked team, which is kind of the good with the bad of his tenure, not necessarily reaching the potential of the roster that he's had up there at Louisville for the last couple of years. I mean, think about Tyler Shuck and all the talent that they have. Isaac Brown coming in last year, that defensive talent that they had was there. I saw it in person when SMU went up there and played at Louisville. That is as good of a team roster wise as you'll find in the ACC. And for whatever reason, they haven't necessarily put it all together throughout his tenure just yet, but they do have a road now to making it not only to the ACC championship, but the college football playoff. And with that Miami win, getting that signature win under their belt, just huge for them. They sit at 5-1 overall, 2-1 in the conference right now. They were able to, get that opening win against Pitt. Of course, very different Pitt team that they did beat there up on the road earlier this year, but then had that rough fall in overtime to Virginia that set them back. Of course, the Who's surviving is a nice way of putting it with what they were able to do against Washington State over the weekend in that game that came down to a safety. Just absolutely wild there. But Jeff Brom and the way they built that roster, that is going to be a roster that every year in the ACC is going to be able to take down top 10 teams. And to do it on the road against Miami, just outstanding work, outstanding execution of their plan. Of course, it helps a lot when Carson Beck throws 4 interceptions and kind of reverts back to maybe why Georgia was like, you know what, we're good. It's time to part ways. But Louisville just was able to make him uncomfortable enough to do that. And when you make quarterbacks uncomfortable, you can see things pay off. Maybe not on play 1, play 2, play 3, but you get them uncomfortable enough where that's who they are the rest of the game, and it affects them. It's really hard to shake it. And so kudos to them for getting that out of Carson Beck. And again, TJ Capers, a guy I covered in high school in recruiting, really special moment for him, I'm sure, to cap that with an interception with so much family and friends down there watching him play that game. So Louisville gets that one. Again, massive win. At the same time, brutal loss in a sense, in my opinion, for the ACC. For me, when you're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, what is best for the ACC? Miami being that upper echelon team that is, considered a, number 1, number 2 type team in the country, that probably is better for the ACC. And if they kind of just get a clear run at Charlotte, that would have been ideal. Now it looks like Georgia Tech is going to be that team that everybody hey, we got to throw the hat in on that they go undefeated and end up rising up the ranks, and hopefully they get the credit that they deserve down there for what they're doing. We'll talk with Chad Bishop in about 15 minutes about that, but 25 minutes about that. But when you look at Miami losing now there's, maybe there's some holes that you could poke in terms of what Miami is a little bit, but that really just sits with Carson Beck. He went as a kind of a game manager quarterback. You can't do what he did in Coral Gables with tossing 4 interceptions, and that's where Miami is going to have to avoid being Miami, like they have been the last couple of years, where they've got that talent, they've got that roster that Mario Cristobal has built, and it's in incredible shape, but you can't shoot yourself in the foot. And so that was a loss that, I was watching the ACC huddle after the game, and they said, maybe a loss was good for Miami. Maybe they needed that. And maybe that will be the case. Last year, they ended up having one, and they didn't necessarily respond the way they needed to. But, this time we'll see if it's a different story with Miami. They do head on the road in 2 weeks to play SMU. So another big game for Miami there. And then, of course, that's kind of the toughest game that's left on their schedule in a sense. I mean, they've got tough road tests to end the regular season with Virginia Tech, and I believe Pittsburgh is their last game of the year, but you don't necessarily have that big time opponent. I mean, their last 4 games of the year are Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh's playing well. Mason Heichel really stepping up for them, but nonetheless, it is a clear path for them to be a one-loss team and probably get in the college football playoff, with their one loss being what I think is going to be a Louisville team that, depending on how the rest of their schedule goes, they've got, of course, SMU. They do get Kentucky at the end of the year. They'll have some opportunities to continue to keep themselves up at the top of that ACC race, and we'll see what happens. But at Louisville, I just want to end by saying you've got to give credit to Jeff Brom. Always has his guys ready to go, always ready to play, and they are very, very competitive. And they built a roster that can be that way. You have some programs that don't have that depth, don't have that talent to do what they did this weekend on the road in Miami, and they did that. You have to be able to capitalize when you have games that are put in your favor and giving you the opportunity to go out there and win. And they did that. So kudos to Jeff Brom and the Louisville team for going down there and beating Miami. The other Friday night game that was really, really quite the interesting one as well. It was UNC Cal, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly now. And that was quite the game where Cal was able to overcome them. Friday night, UNC Cal, really ugly game. Just 2 teams that, Cal is obviously one win away from being bowl eligible at this point. They're continuing to kind of put things together, but UNC, on the other hand, just absolutely can't. Fumble in the end zone that leads to that loss for the Tar Heels. That would have been a nice win for UNC to get that over the finish line, just so that, okay, they can see a little bit of progress of having that fight and then getting to that point. But instead, they're 0-2 in ACC play, 2-4 in the league. They're not as bad off as a Florida State is, but they also don't have any sort of signature win under their belt. Florida State's down bad in league play, now 0-4. We'll talk about them to maybe cap the show briefly, but you have a team that in UNC is just finding ways to lose, and they've got to find that way to push things across the finish line, get some momentum. I don't know if we're going to see a midseason coaching change with a Bill Belichick. I don't know. That doesn't seem like something that is going to happen unless the bottom really, I mean, it's already fallen out for me. Like if they're ready to hit the reset and not do this, I feel like it might have come either Bill would have stepped away or, they would have announced something. I'm not sure, but they're 6 games in now, 2-4. It's going to be a really tough road to get bowl eligible for them. A lot of things have to turn around for UNC to get on the right path here. But, Sajia Patelli with Cal has been outstanding for them, but wasn't overly good against a bad UNC team, and they were at home too. So nonetheless, though, they were able to survive. They improved to 2-1. I don't see them making a run into the ACC championship picture or race. Of course, they only have one loss, so anything's possible there. But sitting at 5-2, good job, Justin Wilcox. Taking a true freshman quarterback and getting to this point in the season where they're kind of playing with house money. This was kind of a make or break year, I think, for Justin Wilcox, and so they get that win Friday night and move past UNC. So good on them. We'll break down the Saturday slate in just a second, but do want to thank our friends at Security National Bank for supporting us. Great family bank that and sorry, I got to get my media here right. Great family bank that can support all of your needs, from the big things to the small things. They really treat you like family, and that is why they're growing at such a fast rate as well, really expanding their reach and their offerings as well. So whether it's your personal banking or your business banking, leave it to Security National Bank to support you, and go to securitynational.bank to find out more information on what they can do for you. We appreciate their support of All Access AM, a just truly family-run business that cares about people, very active in the community as well. So make sure you reach out to them, securitynational.bank, and they will be able to work out everything you need on the banking side of things for you. So appreciate their support. Again, securitynational.bank for more information. All right, we continue on breaking down the ACC, and again, in 15 minutes we'll have Chad Bishop join us. So really excited to have Chad on. I've known him a long time. He's worn a bunch of hats, has a bunch of different experience, but now in Atlanta covering Georgia Tech. Of course, we had Bryce Kuhn on last week previewing week 8 and talking about Georgia Tech last week, but now Chad Bishop joins us in 15 minutes. So excited to have him on. We'll have Alexis Cubit of Louisville, of the Louisville beat on in 30 minutes. So jam-packed back half of the show for you guys, breaking down two of the hottest teams in the ACC. Let's continue on with a week 8 and kind of rounding out some of the other takeaways that were from this week. Let's go over to Clemson, South Carolina, where I was there in attendance watching SMU take down Clemson, and a game where SMU did not trail over there in Memorial Stadium, and a really, I think, a game that on the Clemson side of things, you had a backup quarterback, Christopher Vizina, who I thought played better than I was expecting. I mean, if you were on Tiger Illustrated of the On3 network, you were reading about him, and there was not a lot of confidence going in with him, but he completed 29 of 42 passes, 317 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Couple of big plays for Clemson that really honestly kept it close. I mean, SMU's secondary continues to be a problem in a sense. They gave up, 317 yards passing. There's no way around it, but they also shut down the run, and the only explosive plays for Clemson were busts. I would imagine. For SMU, they had one where they ran by another DB, but it was not a game where Clemson really sustained a bunch of drives. They were able to pick up chunks of yardage at times, and then that was kind of what happened. TJ Moore, 32-yard touchdown, was their opening score. A 62-yard touchdown from Christopher Vizina to TJ Moore again to close the gap to 16-14 in the third quarter. And then they had a 23-yard touchdown. That was a 4th and 21. That was just a prayer. And I don't really understand what SMU was doing there, but Clemson also had a short field coming off of an interception by Kevin Jennings. But that was it. There was no sustained success by Clemson offensively. And I want to talk about this, and Kelly Gramlich and Eric McLean, 2 Clemson grads, do the Gramlich and McLean pod. They are way more in depth on Clemson, and we love them, and they've seen this program, so up close, and really have their takes on it. So I encourage you guys to support our other ACC friends and give them a listen. But You know, I I've always paid attention to Clemson. I think what Dabo Sweeney has done is nothing short of just awesome. Just the way he's done it, the commitment to his student athletes, building Clemson into what it is today. This is my first time going over there. What an unbelievable campus, group of people, all those things. You have all the facilities now. You have the money. Graham Neff just got an extension. Congrats to him. Saw him chatting it up with Damon Evans, SMU's AD, on the field beforehand. All of these things are in place for Clemson, and they recruit at a pretty high level. Here's where I am at with Clemson and why, one, this is fixable, but also it's going to take a very different approach than what Dabo Sweeney has done. We know that Dabo Sweeney doesn't like the portal. He wants to stay committed to the guys he committed to. That's why Clemson doesn't have very many decommitments in recruiting, which maybe, as we're finding out, maybe to a fault. Maybe you need some senior evals to go on and guys need to be moved on from. But you have a program that is so committed to their guys that they don't want to go out and address roster needs. When Phil Maffa was down last year, didn't like Clemson's run game at all. I thought they were one-dimensional, and when Phil Maffa was hurt and in there, they really couldn't be that downhill running attack that, in my opinion, that was what really helped Cade Klubnik, get to the level he was at last year. And you have all these gazelles at receiver that are unbelievable and really sending thoughts and prayers out to Bryant Wesco. I covered him, before he had any offers or major offers. It was really just a bouncy triple option attack wide receiver going into his junior year. And he looked like a freak in a workout, and wrote a story on him. But they've got all sorts of talent there for Cade Klubnik, for Christopher Vizina to throw to. The offensive line is a position that I thought was fairly suspect last year. I thought you look at the South Carolina game, you look at the SMU second half or last three quarters, SMU's defensive line last year was eating up Clemson. And of course, Georgia had their way with Clemson last year. Other than that, Clemson's schedule was pretty chill. Syracuse, obviously, or not Syracuse, South Carolina was kind of that one at the end that didn't matter for the ACC, but Clemson at that point was really needing a lot of help, and then sneaks into the ACC championship. When you see some of those things, I felt like this was the year that Clemson needed to go out and do two things. Address the offensive line. Yes, I know they have some guys that were getting some draft accolades and things like that. But offensive line is a position where you cannot stay content. And I felt like Clemson did that. And they weren't able to go out and add to that mix. They weren't able to upgrade their depth. Braden Jacobs is going to be a really good player, but he's a true freshman out there being asked to do a lot against Isaiah Smith and Cam Robertson and these edge rushers for SMU, that those two guys are seniors. So that's a big ask. SMU, on the other hand, PJ Williams goes down. Andrew Chamblee comes in. He's a former All-SEC freshman who's now in his third or fourth year of college football. I think third. It's a pretty good situation to be in when your all-conference level tackle goes down for a play and you pop in a guy who started as a true freshman at Arkansas. SMU did that because they always want to address depth on the offensive line. Now, long-term, you have to build your offensive line through the high school ranks. That's where most of the draft picks come from. But Clemson wanted to sit there and say, okay, got all these wide receivers, got Cade Klubnik coming back, and we got Adam Randall back. Adam Randall is not an inspiring play at running back. So there are a lot of things that Clemson had to fix because they were one-dimensional last year when they didn't have Phil Maffa. And running back is a position where you can kind of plug and play guys, and either they're ready early in their career and you can see the flashes, or they're not. So I like what Adam Randall's done, but Clemson is not in a situation where they should have been feeling so good offensively that they were going to be this complete team. And that is what's sinking Clemson right now, is they're not a complete team offensively. Forget about Cade Klubnik's injury. This is all before. So that's where Clemson fell short. They didn't look themselves in the mirror a little bit offensively from a personnel perspective and really challenge themselves. And most of that starts at the top. Dabo has undeniable belief in his players that they're going to continue to develop, trust the process, do all those things. And in the day and age of college football that we're in, there are teams that you look around the country, including on the other side of the ball at SMU, where that was kind of, I think, where SMU maybe got into it a little bit. SMU's secondary was going to be the strength of this team. You had Ahmad Moses back. You had Isaiah Wacobia back. You had Jalen Davis Robinson and Deuce Harmon back, who were both healthy in Jalen Davis Robinson's case at a time. And then you had Deuce Harmon, who really came on at the end of last year. You had Speedy Nettles, who you really liked. You added some guys here and there, Marcellus Barnes. That was going to be the strength of this defense as the front seven figured itself out. Looking back, SMU should have challenged itself a little bit more and said, hey, we think if we have an injury at corner or if somebody doesn't develop the way we think they're going to, this could be a problem. Now, nobody would have expected Isaiah Wacobia to kind of play the level he's played, and he had a very good game, I thought, against Clemson for the most part, save for a play on 4th and 21. But you need to challenge yourself more and more in today's era of roster construction. The issue with that is at times you have players that don't like the situation. Okay, we're gonna bounce. We're out, which is kind of the tough part of this. At safety, SMU could have added another guy. They tried really hard. It didn't work out. At corner, they had one guy committed, flips, Chasen Johnson leaves. They get Marcellus Barnes, who looks like a guy that they can count on and does. I mean, the way he's playing now. But he didn't start off that way. So there are some things that as everybody figures out roster construction, the right way to tap into the portal, the wrong way, and what doesn't work, and money spending is involved, that are always going to be questioned. I mean, look at NFL GMs and when they hand out fat contracts that people say, oh, that's a bad move right away. And some of you could say, okay, that's a great value right away. It's all things that can be second guess. And that's where now Clemson is asked. Everything they do, everything they stand for is going to get second guessed because of the way they're playing this year. And it doesn't need this overhaul of burn the roster to the ground, all these things. They're going to lose a lot off of this year's team too. I mean, they're going to lose some draft picks. They're going to lose some guys that are going to play in the league on Sundays. And Tom Allen didn't just forget how to play defense. But they need to really look at their roster construction and challenge themselves to figure out a way to work on their culture still and find guys that fit. There are tons of guys that would love to play at Clemson, but figure out how to get better from an evaluation perspective, because at a couple key positions this year, they've been let down. So I don't think it's scheme much. We saw last year what Clemson can look like when they have solid running back. You obviously had a schedule that was a little softer in moments where they looked the part. But that should have been the time where, okay, you balance that out with saying, look at where we were against those really strong rosters, Georgia, South Carolina, SMU, teams like that. And then you look at them when they're playing, just okay competition, and you see them take advantage of it. You say, okay, we need to raise the bar a little bit on the offensive line. That's where I'm kind of at with that. I think right now with where Clemson's run game is at, they're having to do a lot of the screens. They're having to do a lot of this. SMU eventually snuffed those out, but now they were able to hit things over the top against a bad SMU secondary. That's kind of in the same position as the Clemson offensive line. Should have been evaluated a little bit tougher. But again, you really couldn't have possibly expected some of the things you did with SMU safety play at times. So it is going to be really interesting to see kind of what happens with Clemson going forward, if they fold, if they don't, if they kind of find a way here to figure things out. Before we get to Chad Bishop in just a couple minutes, guys, let's run through a couple of quick takeaways here. Pitt gets a 30-13 win over Syracuse. Pitt, Mason Heichel continues to play at a high level as a true freshman. He did have an interception, so kind of took a step back against a Fran Brown defense that always plays hard, but they were still able to rack up 30 there. Syracuse is at, unfortunately for them, kind of a dumpster fire scenario right now. And then you've got UConn going and beating BC. I don't know what's going on with BC as far as why the bottom has really fallen out, but this was an easy pick last week for us on the show to go with UConn here, and it wouldn't have been close. I mean, you could have. I don't know if there was an alternate line you could have bet on this one that ended up as a 15-point difference in the ball game. But Bill O'Brien, a lot of people are high on him. He's forgotten more football than most of us, but I don't see that culture going in the right direction. I'll be interested to see long-term what they do. They need to develop more NIL funds to go out and get players, and they need to reevaluate how they get players because it's just bad all the way around. 3 points in the second half. It was a good competitive football game. It was 20-17 lead for BC going in a half, and then UConn boat raced them in the second half basically. And then Virginia survives with the safety over Washington State. That was a pretty wild decision-making process there with Washington State. The fair catch on the kick return that sets them up in that poor field position. Just overall a wild game, but you got to survive some of those. And now Virginia has done that against Washington State, and of course against Louisville earlier this year. So they remain unbeaten in ACC play. The ACC Conference Championship picture, Georgia Tech, Virginia, SMU are the unbeatens at one-loss. Pitt, Duke, Louisville, Cal, Miami. A lot of ACC football to be played for Miami. They've only played 2 conference games so far. And a lot of football left, though, for Georgia Tech, sitting at 4-0 in league play, 7-0 overall. The Jackets and Brent Key are rolling through conference play, and now really excited to bring on our next guest here. Got Mr. Chad Bishop joining the show. Chad, thanks so much for the time, man. Good to see you first and foremost. How are things over there in Atlanta?
Hey, man, things are good. Weather's nice. It's, in the 70s and cool at night. And apparently I got a top 7 football team on my hands to cover. So here we are.
I feel like you're in my position of last year where all of a sudden SMU reeled off of a few wins in ACC play, and people are like, oh man, there's a chance here. This is going to be something. And that's been it from the get-go with Georgia Tech. I know expectations are high there. Brent Key keeps those expectations high. He keeps those players, certainly under a microscope as far as what they expect from them day in, day out. But this is off to such a good start for them.
Yeah.
They've got to be feeling really good. I'm sure Brent Key is finding ways right now to keep these players a little eye on the ball as things start to get into that point where they're probably going to be a top 10 team.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch from my perspective. You look at Georgia Tech's schedule and you pinpoint that Wake Forest game, and once they got over that hump, playing at Wake Forest, winning that game in overtime, it just seems like there's been a looseness with this bunch. I know it's only been a couple games since then, but it seems like that was almost like a sigh of relief. Like maybe that was our quote unquote one letdown game, and they've been refocused coming out of a bye week after that and handled Virginia Tech and went on the road and beat a really, really good Duke team. But there's almost a sense of like, all right, we're a really good football team. We're top 10, we're undefeated, all that stuff. Let's go play, see what happens. We know we're a good team. We got a great quarterback, and we can't really control the outcome. So let's go prove to everyone that we deserve this, that we are a top 10 team. And they certainly showed that Saturday at Duke with scoring 20 unanswered points and pulling away from a good Blue Devils team. And they're sort of embracing this role of, hey, not the underdogs anymore. Everybody's coming to beat Georgia Tech, and they've handled that well so far.
You could look at this win over Duke and certainly, you see the impressiveness of being able to roll through what they did and score those 20 unanswered. But any red flags for you off of some of that and just kind of where the game kind of started and was heading at some points, with the way Duke was, in position to really make that a game where, I mean, Manny Diaz and his staff got to be feeling like they let one slip away too.
Yeah, I don't know if they're red flags. The term I've been thinking about is nonsensical. A lot of the ways Georgia Tech has been winning hasn't made a lot of sense. Like, you go back to Colorado and turn the ball over 3 straight times to open the game and won that one. Up 13-0 on Clemson, up 21-14 on Clemson, blew those leads and won that one. Down 20-3 at Wake Forest and won that one in overtime. Down 10-7 to Duke in the third quarter and won that one. Their rush defense is now last in the ACC. The pass defense, not great, but they're only giving up 20 points a game. Their turnover margin is -2. That doesn't make any sense, and they're still winning. So to me, it's just they're finding ways to win. Now, the pessimists would say, well, at some point, the averages are going to average out and the bottom's going to fall out and they're going to lose one of these close games. But they haven't, right? They keep finding a way. They keep figuring it out. Whether they need to pass the ball, they'll pass it. If they need to run it with Haynes King 20 times, they'll run it. If they need to give up 300 passing yards to Duke's Darian Mensah, they'll do it, and they'll keep the Blue Devils out of the end zone. So they're really finding different ways to win week in and week out. The stats don't make a whole lot of sense when it comes to this team outside of their rushing attack, which is their calling card. Again, they're just finding ways to win, and I've seen opponents expose them, and it really hasn't fazed them, and they've continued to roll.
They get Syracuse at home this week. Then they go at NC State, at Boston College after a bye, Pitt at home, and then finish up with Georgia. I mean, college football parity is real. Yeah. Now that they've navigated the way they have through the schedule so far, I mean, this is where they've got to keep that eye on the ball. But good enough for them. They've got Haynes King at quarterback. I mean, a guy who is quickly becoming a legend, I'm sure, over there in Georgia Tech circles. He comes from a legendary high school family, of course, here in Texas, Longview High School. And, he embodies what they want as a program, that toughness, that, backs against the wall every single day, counting us out, kind of all the cliches, but he continues to deliver. It's been so cool for us to at least watch it from over here and seeing what he's put together and knowing his background and where he comes from. Do you see him starting to, kind of see that, look at this legacy that, leaving here in this stop?
I think he's trying not to.
Yeah.
I imagine it's difficult. I mean, we were on the sidelines Saturday joking with a few colleagues. Every national writer at this point is sort of written the same story about Haynes King being the toughest human on the history of the face of the earth, the toughest football player ever known to man, and his backstory with his dad being a high school football coach there in Longview and how tough he was on Haynes and Haynes' injury past and how he's overcome all that. But you're right. I mean, he does embody what Georgia Tech football is. They've joked that he's an offensive lineman in the quarterback's body. I mean, he just goes out there and does the dirty work and refuses to lose. But, he did that in high school. When he was a junior in high school, he led Longview to a state title, right? Like, he knows how to win. He's been a winner his whole life, and he's been tough his whole life. And Georgia Tech goes as he goes. And luckily for them, he stayed healthy in 6 out of 7 games. He's continued to run the ball on an exceptionally high level. He doesn't get a lot of credit for his passing game, but he continues to be one of the best passers in the country when it comes to completion percentage, doesn't turn the ball over. Yeah, I mean, there's, people sort of tongue in cheek say Haynes King for Heisman, but if they continue to win and he continues to put up numbers both in the passing game and the rushing game, there's no doubt in my mind that he at least deserves to be in that conversation, right? Like, does he win it? I don't know if the numbers are going to be gaudy enough. But if the kid takes Georgia Tech to a 12-0 record, at quarterback as a 3-year starter, there's something to be said for that. So if you haven't seen him play, tune in and watch. I mean, he's a lot of old school quarterback, runs the ball a lot, sort of like a Tim Tebow, Eric Crouch sort of combo, right? And just a great kid, man, just down to earth and humble and been fun to cover for sure.
Brent Key and the way he's built this roster, can you kind of pull the curtain back a little bit? I mean, they lose Eric Singleton in the offseason. That seemed like a major deal, of course. And he goes to Auburn, he gets a bunch of money. Good on him. And he's a spectacular player, but they've just kept on rolling. I mean, what is his mindset on building the roster, transfer portal? I know Akilo Stone has been a nice add, those type of things that they've been able to do to really position themselves to be in this spot.
Well, Brent Key loves recruiting first and foremost, right? Loves high school recruiting, His relationships across the state of Georgia and Alabama are just, almost second to none. I mean, he recruits nonstop, right? And you got to have that. So he's never going to deviate away from high school recruiting. And you look at some of his defensive players this year, I mean, you can see that. And then if you look at some of his offensive linemen, you can see that as well. But what Brent Key also loves is sort of the money ball aspect. I mean, he's admitted he's read that book a million times. He loves the NFL draft. He loves seeing how NFL teams build their rosters. And he sort of takes pages out of those books and say, all right, here's my high school recruiting. Here's how I supplement out of the portal. Here's all my returners. How do I mesh all these guys together? And you look at this year's team. You mentioned Eric Singleton leaving at wide receiver. Well, they went and got Eric Rivers and Dean Patterson at wide receiver. You look at the defensive front. You have A.J. Hoffler from Clemson and Akilo Stone from Ole Miss. In the secondary, Jai Gilmore from Georgia State, Daquan White from Eastern Michigan, John Mitchell from Penn State, Savion Riley from Colorado. So it's all encompassing, right? And they take their NIL budget and whatever money they have, they deviate it around to build what now looks like a championship roster. So it's not 60 transfers, it's not 80 high school kids. It's a really, really good mixture. And Brent Key, he jokes he loves Excel, so he loves getting out his spreadsheet and seeing what the depth chart looks like and where the money's allocated, and clearly has done a masterful job going into this year of building this roster and supplementing the talent and the depth, which has been huge for this team. As guys have gone down, other guys have stepped right in. So yeah, he's done a masterful job, at least for this 2025 season.
I am not asking this to stir anything up. So let me be very clear.
Stir away. Stir it up.
I think Brent Key is one of the crown jewels of this league. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
He's his alma mater, Georgia Tech. He is where he is. I'm sure other schools are looking at him saying, forget that he is at his alma mater. He is a great football coach.
Sure.
I want to see him lead our program. Like fit and culture perspective, probably Penn State, right? Like that is just a guy that I feel like would fit up there. I don't think he will leave, but there are some major jobs coming open. How is Georgia Tech and Ryan Alpert, starting to maybe address some of those things, maybe internally, and keep him right where he is?
I'm sure if they haven't already, they will. I mean, Georgia Tech has shown really at this point an outstanding investment in football in recent years. They've increased the athletic budget overall. There's a new facility in the end zone at Bobby Dodd Stadium. There are renovations coming to Bobby Dodd Stadium soon. Brent Key's assistant salary pool has gone up. I mean, not only did he get a contract extension last February, but his offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner, got one as well. I never say never in this business, and I harken back to the days when I covered Western Kentucky and Willie Taggart was at his alma mater, and folks thought there's no way he's leaving his alma mater, and he goes to USF, right? And I'm not saying the situations are similar, but you just never know. I mean, Brent Key's from Alabama. What if an Alabama or an Auburn comes open, right? Like, all it takes is someone throwing a massive pile of money at a guy. And Brent Key's been honest about it. I mean, he talked about it last week. Like, if it comes to that, he'll talk to his team about it. He's told his team, like, those guys are going to get in the transfer portal and take some money elsewhere and do it best for their family. So, yeah, on paper, I mean, why would Brent Key leave? It's Atlanta. It's his alma mater. He's building this thing. I mean, he loves Georgia Tech to death, but you just never know, right? And so I think for right now, I'd be incredibly shocked if Brent Key was not the Georgia Tech football coach for the near future. But you never say or you just never know. I do think Georgia Tech will start to scrounge up the money and put a package together to make sure he stays. To your point, I'm sure his agent will float his name out there for all these places to try to help bankroll that next paycheck. But Brent Key clearly is super happy where he is, super happy to be a Yellow Jacket. I definitely would expect him to stay in town for the short term at least. But, again, we never know. So we'll see what happens.
Let's get your take on the ACC championship picture. Georgia Tech, Virginia, SMU, now the only unbeatens in the league. Of course, Miami hanging around, Louisville hanging around. Those are kind of my five that I'm watching really closely. Yeah. What's your take on where the ACC championship game is going to look like here in month and a half or so.
Yeah, I'm prepared for chaos. I think we
Yeah.
all should be, right? Like, I think a couple weeks ago I was, what's the tiebreaker if there's like 4 undefeated? Well, what's the tiebreaker if there's like 5 2-loss teams, right? Or 4 1-loss teams? I mean, this conference is so massive, and it seems like it's worked out to where like nobody plays each other. Georgia Tech doesn't play Louisville, SMU, Miami, right? They don't play any of those teams, right? I mean, Duke's got a pretty manageable schedule the rest of the way. So does Virginia. Georgia Tech doesn't play any of the teams at the top of the conference. They've already knocked off Clemson, who's out of it. I mean, right now you'd have to think that Georgia Tech and Virginia are the favorites on paper because of what they have in front of them and what they've done to this point. But as you open the conversation, there's so much parity. I mean, Georgia Tech almost lost at Wake Forest. Louisville just went down to Miami and won. Stanford beat Florida State. I mean, week in and week out, the games you think there's no way that team is going to lose or there's no way that team can win, that's exactly when those upsets happen or those eyebrow-raising results happen. So, I mean, I don't know. We're about, halfway through the ACC schedule at this point. At least Tech is. Right now it looks like Tech and Virginia, but 2 weeks from now it could be, SMU and Louisville, or SMU and Miami back in the mix. So, it's very exciting. I guess maybe the positive of a massive conference is there's still so many teams left in the race, even the 1-loss teams. I mean, shoot, even the 2-loss teams, if you finish 6-2, you got to think there's an outside chance that you could be in it on that final weekend. So it's going to be crazy, man. It's going to be exciting. And, from Georgia Tech's perspective, if they take care of business, they have nothing to worry about. And really at this point, even if they drop a game, they might not have anything to worry about. So it's just, we'll see how it goes the rest of the way. Exciting to watch. And I can't wait for this month of November. It's going to be wacky. I can guarantee that.
Does Georgia Tech win the ACC championship? Let's get you see, right now. We're not going to hold you to it. We're going to bring you back. Don't worry. But
the championship game, if they get there, I think they do. Okay. Now will they get there? Again, I don't know. Their schedule on paper is easy. They're going to be favored in a lot of these games, even on the road at NC State, probably at home against Pittsburgh. So it looks like their path is clear. So, if they can get there, I think there's not a team in this conference they can't beat. They've proven that over the last couple of years and this year. Now, what happens the rest of the way? Do they slip up? Does SMU and Virginia stay undefeated? Do they get locked out with 1 loss? I don't know. But I think if Georgia Tech can get there, they'll be able to get the job done.
Yeah. I think so. At this point, they are looking like a team of destiny. We'll see. A lot more chaos to come in this ACC race. Chad Bishop, thanks so much for joining us at Mr. Chad Bishop on Twitter. You're the man. Have a great Monday. We appreciate it.
Friend. See you. Bye.
There he goes. Chad Bishop joining us on All Access AM. One of the hardest working guys in media. So really appreciate his time to kick off the week on All Access AM. Do want to remind you guys before Alexis Cubit joins us, make sure you check out our friends at BigGameUSA.com. BigGameUSA.com. Get official footballs for all of your ACC schools that you want to find or buy them for your family or friends. Great Christmas gift. Get 10% off with code BEON, the number 325. So BEON 325 gets you 10% off at Big Game USA. Let's bring in our next guest now, Alexis Cubit, joining us, a Baylor alum. So first of all, SMU fans, be nice out there. I know, SMU doesn't have bragging rights over Baylor, but I'm sure you enjoyed that game. That was a wild one here in Dallas, but now covering Louisville, of course, which is really why we're here. But congrats on your Baylor Bears at least having bragging rights over SMU.
I was going to say, we're just going to pretend like this past weekend never happened, and we're going to focus on that win.
Well, look, now SMU fans have a double reason for them to be mad at Dave Aranda and the Bears, dishing them the loss and then unable to get it past TCU. That's something we can at least lock arms over.
Yeah, exactly.
But you did have quite the time down there in Miami covering that Louisville-Miami game. Louisville coming out with the win. Jeff Brom, I kind of talked about it, gave my take earlier on the show. But Jeff Brom, his ability to get his teams ready for these top 10 opponents, these big games, even though people are sleeping on them, they were, I think, 13.5-point dogs in this one. That was a huge number to begin with. They get it done. They beat Miami. What is it about his process that makes them so ready every single time they take the field?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it just seems like Jeff just really gets up for those big games. I mean, even if you go back to his Purdue days, he has, several wins over, top 5, top 10 opponents. It's just, I think it's that underdog, mentality where they do really well when they're not expected to win games, right? Like, you think about 2 years ago, when they went in there and beat Miami to clinch the ACC championship spot. First time in program history for a win at Miami and to go to that ACC championship game. You think last year when they beat Clemson in Death Valley, which doesn't look as impressive these days, but that's beside the point. Still, they had never done it before. So that's the thing about it. And then this year, like you said, they were counted out 13.5-point underdogs. Then right before, kickoff, it went to 10.5. And then by halftime, it was like 2.5. So clearly the bettors knew something that, maybe the Johnny come latelys were there. But no, I think the thing is, again, like the underdog mentality and really throwing things at Miami that they were not expecting, which I think a couple players said during post game, putting 3 quarterbacks in, running Wildcat with Colin Lacey and having even more plays that they didn't even run. And that was just the first drive. You know what I mean? And then as far as defense, I have been saying this all season. This defense does not get enough credit. Last year, they were ready to fire Ron English. This year, they're quiet.
Yeah. I was, as not to interrupt, but I listened to the post-game radio show leaving Louisville after covering that SMU game, and that was all it was fire on English. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. What's crazy is I had someone who literally said after the Virginia game, "Oh, defense gave up a touchdown." I'm like, they gave up 1 touchdown in regulation. You know what I mean? And so they gave up a the field goal. If you give up 10 points only in a game, chances are you win. But I'm just glad that they were able to have the spotlight that they were on a Friday night ESPN game. Carson Beck came in with 3 picks, had 4, almost 5 in that game. So, it's nice to see that defense, get that shine.
And I think for me, watching this Louisville team, for the last 2 years, they have athletes. They have guys that can play in the NFL. It's all about that consistency, right? That's why it's great that they can have the top 10 wins, but they've all really come as an unranked team. So putting that all together has been, the challenge. And it's a challenge for a lot of teams across college football week in, week out. But one of the athletes that has really emerged is Chris Bell. His performance against Miami, unbelievable. You mentioned Colin Lacey. There was a ton of expectation around this passing attack with Miller Moss coming in. What has Chris Bell meant to this team as of late? And then where is Miller Moss in that development piece as he looks to be kind of that next great Jeff Brom quarterback?
Yeah. So starting off with Chris Bell, it's so funny because I had someone who asked me where Chris Bell transferred in from. I said, no, and it's a testament to the era that we're living in, but the fact that he is Louisville through and through, freshman, sophomore, junior, now senior year, is really a testament to the kind of young man that he is. There were rumors that schools were offering him multi-million dollars to transfer during the off season, and he decided to stay at Louisville. I don't know what the counteroffer was with the Cardinals, but that's beside the point. The point is that he has been a guy who has been at one school for all 4 years, was not the star for 3 of them. He was always kind of that little extra or that little complimentary piece. But the biggest thing for Chris, he's always been talented. I want to say that big body, baby face, but, very physical. But the thing for him was just the maturity factor. And he talked about during the offseason how he had to really learn how to control his emotions because he knew this was his last shot. Senior year, he really has to put, good tape together to get to the NFL, which obviously he will. So it starts off the field for him. in just that maturity factor. I don't think that gets talked about enough as far as these athletes learning how to be mature, carry themselves with poise, not get caught up too much in emotion, but tailoring that emotion toward, the game. So that's really where it starts. And then after that, everything else just kind of was able to shine because he was able to, not get those dumb penalties, not throw water bottles at Kentucky fans, all of those things.
Who doesn't want to do that though?
Fair. Fair. I think Kentucky fans want to throw water bottles at Kentucky fans these days.
Yeah.
But and then as far as Miller Moss goes, Miller has had an interesting journey. Resilient is probably the best way to describe him. It does something to your confidence when you get benched at a school like USC, with 3 games left in the regular season. Then you come to another school, you think you're going to have this, run game that you can depend on, so you don't have to pass as much. And then your running backs get hurt. So now you have to, not only are you thrust into a new system, but you're having to adjust what you just learned as far as that new system. And it has not been good. I mean, he had 3 games where he threw for pick sixes. That's not great. But he was able to really, I think, take this bye week and kind of recalibrate a little bit. Obviously, Miami was going to have a huge defense that everybody has been talking about. And this was an opportunity for him to really kind of get it together. And then the other thing, too, is I think he had help with the offensive line. Shout out to them. They played a lot better. I think Ruben Bain only had 1 tackle, which is insane. They didn't get to him much. He didn't throw any interceptions. So, yeah, it's just a learning curve. And I think for him, he needed this game, like you said, as a pick-me-up. Definitely depending on those receivers, had a little bit more help in the run game with Isaac Brown looking a lot healthier than he's looked in almost a month. But yeah, I think this can do a lot for Miller's confidence in terms of, he wasn't perfect, but he did just enough to be able to win, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 more rushing. So this is definitely big for him and in terms of his confidence and his growth at this point in the season.
And Isaac Brown, I'm glad you brought him up. I mean, he's been one of the most dynamic players in the ACC. For him not to be healthy earlier this year, I'm sure that was a big piece to the puzzle, with that loss at Virginia when you don't have a guy as healthy as he is at that level. I mean, it makes a difference. There's no doubt about it. And so they're going to look to, overcome that now that he's healthy and kind of roll the rest of the way. You look at the schedule, next 3 games, Boston College, Virginia Tech, Cal, only one of those on the road at Virginia Tech. And then it's Clemson, SMU, one, of course, at Louisville, and then they come to SMU. And then, of course, Kentucky doesn't matter for the ACC world, but it could matter for college football playoff implications, of course, to end the season. They've got that one at home as well. This schedule, how do you kind of see it playing out the rest of the way, assuming kind of healthy, kind of similar? Do you think they have what it takes to navigate this and be a 1-loss team entering that final weekend that is kind of sitting pretty, maybe hoping for some chaos and things like that?
Yeah, I was talking to a colleague and we were looking at the schedule and we were saying, this really could be a 1-loss team. This really could be 11-1. The caveat is there's always something, right, Billy?
Right.
Jeff Brom has been a giant slayer, if you will, in terms of those top 5, top 10 wins. The game after, however, is the one that he has always lost. Again, going back to Miami last year or 2 years ago, right after that was the Pitt loss. Beating Clemson last year, right after that was the Stanford loss.
That was bad.
Yes, it was very confusing as well. But the difference is, as someone pointed out, those games were on the road. Boston College is at home. So you have to figure that does factor into, the comfort level of not having to travel. You get to keep your excitement in one place, not on a plane ride. So I think they're like a 23-point favorite against Boston College, which after they got beat by UConn, fair. And like you said, Virginia Tech obviously doesn't even have a head coach right now. Cal could be tricky. Cal could definitely be tricky with the way they're playing it and the quarterback that they have this year. But no, I definitely see this as a very winnable schedule. You don't have to go to Death Valley. Like you said, Clemson comes to Louisville, which is huge in terms of just that home field advantage, because Louisville has not lost many games at home during Jeff Brom's tenure. So no, we very well, and that's the crazy thing, but thinking about the fact that this really could be an 11-1 team when I had them at maybe 8 or 9 losses, because I just, not just because I'm on the show, but I didn't have them beating Miami, Clemson, and SMU in the same season. But if they can put together the game plan they put against the number 2 team in the country, the way that Miami's playing in Miami, I mean, as Kevin Garnett said, anything is possible.
Yeah. It's going to ride on Miller Moss's shoulders, I think. Having Isaac Brown healthy, great, huge confidence booster for a quarterback when you have somebody who could run the ball like that. But I think Miller is going to need to carry this team in a couple of these games. You look at that SMU game looming, one of the better run defenses in the conference. Just leave it to me, on that, the knowledge of that. But that secondary is super leaky. They'll have a chance to throw it around the yard pretty well there in Dallas. But, Miller's going to have to step up. And he did step up against Miami this past weekend, a very efficient game for him. That's got to be something he can build off of. And if they do that, they can end up in Charlotte. This ACC championship picture is gotten a little clearer with Miami going down, leaving only 3 teams unbeaten. Do you see Louisville ending up in Charlotte to play for an ACC championship?
I want to say yes, but I just think that Virginia loss has been just a chink in the armor. Virginia has a very winnable schedule. If you look at that, they don't really play anybody that's at the top of the league right now, if I'm not mistaken. It hurts that they don't play Georgia Tech because there's no head-to-head with them. Louisville doesn't play Georgia Tech, and that head-to-head would have been important. So I think to a certain extent, their destiny is in their own hands, but you still need some help from Virginia's opponents. So if Virginia can get one, a loss, 2 losses, 3 losses, I think Louisville can end up in Charlotte. But I do think that Virginia game is going to be just kind of looming on their shoulders as far as just that one thing. So I want to say yes, but I just think that Virginia's schedule is so winnable that I don't see them losing a game. So that's really the biggest thing.
And I think, too, my worry is that somewhere in those final 5 games, there's a misstep for Louisville, just because they haven't done it yet. And when you haven't done something and gotten over the hill on certain things, it's kind of like Miami now is they've got 1 loss. Well, we've seen this story before. Is this going to end up with another loss that kicks Miami out of the ACC championship like we've kind of seen these last few years? So it's a hard hill to climb, but we do know that Clemson won't be taking a spot from anyone this year. So that's something that certainly changes things up.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing. It's funny because Miami fans were just imploding. And I'm like, maybe it's because it was this early in the year. But Miami has always kind of faltered. Look at last year with Syracuse and Fran Brown helping Dabo out.
Yeah.
So I think it was just the earlier part of the years where Miami fans just kind of struggled with getting a loss at that point. Had this been, maybe 2 weeks from now, they're like, okay, we're back to normal. But I think it was a time of year that it happened.
Well, great stuff, Alexis. We really appreciate you jumping on with us, and best of luck the rest of the way. Safe travels when you get on the road, and we appreciate you coming on, and we'll be sure to have you back.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Billy. See you in Dallas.
Yeah, sounds good. See you then.
All right.
Bye. All right, Alexis Cubit wrapping up the show really for us there, breaking down a big Louisville win at Miami. That was the big story of the on-field side of the ACC. And we'll wrap up the show with this as we hit 8 a.m. Central Time. We appreciate you guys, listening. So many people, over 200 of you guys jumping on with us 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time. It's been a great little crowd there. A couple comments have rolled in. One, SMU did pick up a 4-star quarterback. For those of you who don't know, you can read my work at ontheponyexpress.com, part of On 3 Rivals. They did pick up Malachi Ziegler, the 4-star quarterback, over the weekend on Sunday. We'll break that down at ontheponyexpress.com on that side of the pod. But yes, I don't think SMU is going to be taking Kavion Bryant. Malachi Ziegler was their guy. He was their priority, and they go ahead and get him committed. So big deal for Rhett Lashley and company to get one of the best quarterbacks in the country committed over Baylor, Mississippi State, and others. Let's wrap up with this, though. Mike Norvell, I don't really think I spent too much time on this, but one, kudos to Stanford. They hosted Florida State over the weekend, and what did they do? They go out and they get a win over Florida State, which now has not won an ACC game in over a calendar year. Just absolutely insane to me that they could not get that win at Stanford. I picked Florida State to cover. I put all my, not chips, but because I really don't gamble, but I give out picks. I put all my chips on Florida State going out there and finally breaking through. I just did not think that Stanford roster could do it. And instead, Florida State goes out there and loses 20-13. Kudos to Stanford, like I said, for having a game plan that was ready to go. They will certainly be a team that I think years from now we look back and they'll be kind of back in that competitiveness of this ACC and being able to take advantage of what Andrew Luck has done for that program. There's a story at ontheponyexpress.com. You can find it if you click news at the top, you can scroll and find it. But Stanford is trying to show how committed it is. Got a $50 million donation a couple weeks ago, right ahead of the SMU game. They're trying to invest like SMU has. Andrew Luck, kind of joked at the event that I was at with them that, we're taking notes, we're copying everything you're doing. Stanford has that rise that they're trying to get in the right direction. They possessed the ball over almost 33 minutes. They limited their penalties, 67 plays, 293 yards, nothing crazy. Ben Gulbranson only had 90 yards, but Cole Tabb rushed the ball for 118 yards. But really the story, Tommy Castellanos, 242 yards, and what he was able to do wasn't enough. This Florida State team, got down, was shut out of the first quarter. They tie the game in the second quarter on a field goal. And then Stanford builds a 13-3 halftime lead. And coming from watching a team that just played Stanford, their style can wear on you and they can lean on you. And really, that was what happened. They were able to, keep possession and Tommy Castellanos closed the gap to 13-10. But Stanford got another touchdown from Cole Tabb, and that was kind of it. And it came down to the final play, though. FSU was able to make a run at it and take one last try to tie the game and send it into overtime, but they were not able to do it. And that was disappointing, I'm sure, for Mike Norvell. I liked the play call. Kevin Sperry, running, and he was just tackled short of the goal line. And now, according to On3 sources, Pete Nakos, you guys got to follow him. We had him on the show last week. The hot seat is so hot. Florida State is looking at making a change. According to Pete Nakos, the funding it would take would be $100 million to fire Mike Norvell, his staff, and bring in a whole new staff. But they've got a bye week. Then they play Wake Forest at home. Then they go at Clemson, Virginia Tech, at NC State, and then at Florida. Winnable games, all the rest of the way. But do you make a change now? That is what it could be trending towards. I'm of the belief that I think Mike Norvell's a good coach. I think the buttons they pressed on paper were good this offseason, but you haven't seen them get the payoff for it on the field for whatever reason since that Alabama game. Like, you can beat Alabama, but you can't win an ACC game. I don't know what is wrong in Tallahassee. I really don't. I'm not the biggest fan of Tommy Castellanos as far as what he can do as a passer, and maybe the marriage hasn't been perfect, and I don't know some of the other things that are going down with Florida State, but it does look like Mike Norvell's getting close to the end here. And unless they keep him for this Wake game and then they somehow win, and maybe they use that to catapult themselves to make a run late this season, it seems like there'll be another change in the ACC, which would be a massive one if Florida State came open. So we'll be watching that situation develop. Maybe by the time we see you guys Wednesday morning, 7 to 8 a.m. Central on All Access AM, we will have a new development over there in Tallahassee. But we'll be on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll break down our power rankings Wednesday. We'll have some more guests. Then Thursday, we'll, of course, preview the games. We'll have some more guests. Appreciate all of you guys who have subscribed. Please go to @AllAccessAM on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Hit the subscribe or follow button. We really appreciate you guys listening and watching. This is week 2 of this show. We're just getting started. We appreciate Security National Bank for their support. Go to securitynational.bank for more information on how they could help you with your personal banking, your business banking, or all the other services that they provide. You'll get that personal attention to detail when you work with Security National Bank. So appreciate their support of All Access AM. We've run a little late this morning, but we will see you guys next on Wednesday at 7 a.m. bright and early Central Time. So appreciate you guys. Hit the subscribe button, though, for me on YouTube at All Access AM, and turn on those notifications as well. So thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next time on All Access AM.